Alright, so today I want to talk about The Space Between Worlds. This is a sci-fi book I read recently, and it left an impression, so I want to talk about it. And I think also I hadn't seen a review that kind of told me what I would find in these pages, so I guess I just wanted to talk about some things that really impressed me that I wasn't expecting, that's going to make this book stick with me for a while, and why I'm actually so happy I did end up buying it and that it's on my shelf, because that just happened to be a thing that happened because I was in a bookstore with my grandmother, and we buy books when we are together. That is a large part of our relationship. So, like I do in a lot of my videos, I'm just going to at the top of it talk about my emotional experience when I chose to pick this up, how it made me feel, what I liked about it, without talking about any elements, plot-wise or otherwise, and then I'll give you a brief synopsis and talk about things in a tiny bit more detail in terms of plot structure and world building, still spoiler free but with a little bit more detail. So I picked this up last week because I was depressed. I was very apathetic. I was very much not feeling my current reads even though I was liking them, and I was like, I need something to excite me. So I did a mini try a chapter challenge with myself. Didn't film it or anything. I was just looking at what I owned, what was on my Kindle, what was on the May TBR. And I was just like, does anything speak to me? Does anything have a writing style that works with where my brain is at right now? And that was The Space Between Worlds. I also really like 300-page action-packed sci-fi. So I was feeling pretty good about that too. It'd been on my radar for a long time. And although it wasn't actually quite as action-packed as I expected, the pacing of this work actually was kind of a little all over the place for me, but the pros vastly outweigh the cons in this experience. It was a 4.5 star out of 5. And it was one of those rare books that started out as a solid 4. I was like, oh, this is going to be a 4-star read. When you pick up a book, you're like, yes, I feel familiar. I kind of know what I'm into. And by the end, I was like, I was speechless. I was legit like, what did I just consume? It's so tight. It's so condensed because it's only 300 some pages, and everything I got from it was so much more than I expected. Nothing is wasted in this work, I feel. I mean, I think it's a debut novel, so obviously it's not perfect. There are definitely things that I noticed while reading. Like I said, there's a pacing critique I could have. But overall, I really liked it. I'm excited to reread it one day. I think it did really interesting stuff thematically. I liked the world building, all of those things, and I'm going to talk about them. Because, I don't know, I think I really didn't expect how much I was going to connect to this material when I picked it up. So that's my overview, where I was when I picked it up. I am still currently depressed, but I did have a really fun Sunday where I was like, I have 160 pages left of this book and not very many plans, so I'm just going to read this book on and off all day. And I did, and it was perfect. It was a book that I just always loved reading while I was reading, and that's my favorite kind of book, a book that I want to be reading while I'm reading it. I feel like that's what we all want from books, but I think that's deceptively hard to find. Now, synopsis, because you probably know something, but maybe not everything. This is a multi-world kind of universe hopping story. So in this world, there are 300 some different Earths that all exist in parallel to each other, and this current Earth knows how to travel to parallel ones. The caveat being, you have to be dead on that Earth to go there. And so our main character is someone who is dead on most of the other Earths. I think she's only alive on 7 of them. And this is because on most of those Earths, she is brought up and raised in a circumstance where basically those worlds find that person expendable. It's not specifically they're you die, but it's she's consistently born into circumstances that statistically mean she doesn't make it. And part of that's being a minority, part of that's just being poor, sometimes it's her mother. There's all of these things that make her an ideal candidate for traversing these worlds, but also allow for a thematic discussion in terms of classism and just a lot of cool societal conversation can happen there. So that's part of the synopsis. We follow this person whose job is to hop between worlds, and during one of her jobs, she learns some interesting information. And the plot continues from there. I feel like whenever I do synopsis, I'm like, this is kind of the setup, and then plot happens, because I don't like to reveal plot things, because I think that's fun. Now, things that I do want to talk about, though, is the world-building execution, which I, at first, was like, yes, this is a familiar setup. I've read a few multi-world books, in sci-fi and short story or long form. It's not unique, right? Like it happens often. It allows you to ask some pretty interesting questions. But I think what she chose to do with this work that I think really adds to its depth and makes it not shallow, it really brings it to life, is that you get to watch our main character interact with a bunch of people. And through these interactions, you really get a good cultural lens and empathy for what is happening. You don't just see people from what's called Ashtown. Like if you see on this cover, there's like a brown side and there's a blue shiny side. So rich people, poor people, resources, no resources. Like that sounds very binary, right? Like that sounds like you have consumed that sci-fi before. It's very like, part of it reminds me of like Mad Max Fury Road type of thing. But because you get to meet people in both places, in different worlds, you get to see their life circumstances. Like it was a very enriched like cultural perspective to me. Like I felt like I understood a lot of people. And I think giving me that empathy to these characters, to these different situations, really enhanced the world for me. I understood why certain people responded differently to different events or different scenarios. I understood how certain cultures evolved differently. Like it was really, I think, well done and done in such a subtle way. Like I don't think this is the part where I felt like it was like a first author's first tried it. I didn't think this was a part where it's like, oh, that's a little on the nose. I feel like when people have talked about this book, I thought it was like, okay, kind of standard kind of world. But I don't know, it felt, as I was reading it, it kept making me endeared to this style, if that makes sense. Like I just kept being like, I really like how we are exploring this world. And in this exploration, it does help the plot. Like there's a lot of double, triple dipping. Everything is used multiple ways for multiple purposes to help me enjoy this story, if that makes sense. So the world building, really liked it. I also really liked the thematic content. There were a lot of things that we touch on, and I felt like a lot of it got good page time and wasn't stretched too thin. When I finished it, I didn't even realize how much was talked about until I finished. I was like, oh, you tricked me into thinking about all of these different things without feeling overwhelmed or feeling like something got left off. Now, one of the themes I do think was a little heavy-handed, but maybe it wasn't too bad. Like, it would be just my one note of, that's on the nose, and it was a very, predictable moment as well. Like, it was a point where I was like, okay, well, I for sure have some dramatic irony because I am a consumer of stories, so I can figure out what might happen next. But the main character has not, sort of thing. And it also tied into stuff that does enhance some of the thematic content. One of the themes I really liked and would love to see more of in all of science fiction is that intersectionality between science and religion. The origins of science are not separate from religion. Most people are very religious in the old times when they're trying to discover things about the world. The whole goal is they believe in a higher power and they want to know how this world is the way it is. I'm not particularly religious myself, but I don't like that they're separate. I feel like they have similar goals in terms of institutions, and they've become separate, and then they've become politicized, and there's this whole divide, and I don't like it. And I liked here, in this far future world, the intersection, how they are used similarly and differently, and it's not a big part, but it is a non-trivial part, this intersection in the story, and I wasn't expecting it, and I really liked it. I also really liked the conversations you get to have when you have a multi-world theory sort of thing is, what makes you you? Which I feel like I say that in so many videos when I'm reviewing sci-fi. It's like, oh, I love this question. But I do. I mean, I'm in my 20s. I still love thinking about what makes me an individual. How am I who I am today? And that's very much a thing here. As you traverse worlds and you see different versions of different people on those worlds, you have to wonder, why is this version of this person different from that one? Or are they actually very similar? What traits are innate and what traits are learned? What are, based off your circumstances? I love those questions, and I think those questions are done really well here, especially since it's less on the individual. She does get to think about that and look at that, but like I said, the whole premise is she's dead on all the worlds she gets to go to. but she gets to see different coworkers, different past people in her life, different family members, and she gets to see what is consistent across the worlds and what's different. And I really liked that. So I thought that was really fun. Obviously, there's a lot of talk about classism and basically, what does it mean to be poor? What does it mean when a society chooses to ignore poverty? This is the part that I think is potentially the most heavy-handed, but I also still liked it. Like, I didn't mind that this part of the story had an agenda. There was just one part of this theme as we were exploring it that I was like, But also there was a part that I was like, nice. So that balances out. So, like, there's so many things that I enjoyed exploring in this story, and I really also loved the authorial voice and the narrative choice. So this is first-person point of view through our main character, and you could see how it could become a movie. You could see how the screenplay, and like, this would have to be the movie with the corny monologuing that's like overhead and like inside the person's head, because that's something I really loved. Like, it felt like that. And it was a thing I liked. It was a stylistic choice I enjoyed. And I do think what made this story work really well for me from beginning to end is, although I found a pacing problem for myself in part 2, I was like, I don't know why I'm here. I don't know what I'm looking at. I'm not really interested in anything I'm seeing. This is where I had to take off a half star, was like this part of the book. But then the authorial voice just made me care more as I'm in this character's head, as I'm seeing the world. Just its flow was so lovely to me. I will gladly read another work by this author. It really intrigued me. I really loved that flow and getting to be in this person's head. It was both close, but not so close that I felt suffocated, which I thought was really nice. And yeah, these are all of the thoughts that I have. It really impressed me. I expected a fun, action-packed sci-fi. It wasn't really action-packed. I wouldn't necessarily call it fun. It was actually a quite fulfilling reading experience. I was thinking more than I expected to be thinking. I talked to Ryan after I finished this, and I'm like, I feel like I just read like one of those Christopher Nolan sci-fi movies in a book, but it had more to say. Not that Christopher Nolan movies don't always have something to say, but like sometimes they're more like an exercise in exploring a sci-fi element, like Tenet. That's looking at reverse entropy. Fun times, but it doesn't really have anything that it's saying directly. It's more just being as confusing as it can be for fun, which is great. But this one used its sci-fi element to make many points, and I think did those things really well, and gave me people I really cared about. Like, I really cared about her journey. I can't really remember her name because I'm horrible at names. I could look at the book. But she has this own personal journey, this whole story about who she is, what are her goals, what would it mean to be fulfilled, because so much of her life is survival. And when you're in survival mode, how much space do you have to breathe and to like figure out what would it mean to have like my perfect ending, my satisfaction? But meanwhile, she's trying to balance that and survive. This is still a story with a plot, and plots are rarely on the side of our protagonists, right? So I really like this story. I hope you found this review remotely interesting and not too rambly. And if you've read it, I'd love to talk about it. I have a Discord where I've already been talking about this with other people who have really liked this book, or if you type spoilers and type enter a few times, feel free to leave comments that way, or non-spoiler comments are also welcome. Just make sure you mark them, because if spoilers aren't marked, I have to delete them. And I don't like deleting comments unless they're like repugnant, right? Like I don't generally like to do that. If you want to leave an emoji, I think leaving a city is good, because like cities and locations are really important for this. And I think that's also just like, I know the video's already over, Angela, but this is a thing I was thinking about on my walk home, is the reason why I like the world building of this book is because it focuses on the people. And when you think of a city you love, or a small town you're from that you love, or whatever, one of the things that you inherently talk about are the people. Like, the people are what make a place real. They are what make the world. So I think that's another reason I really liked the world building. But that's it. I'm rambling. It is not coherent or cohesive. And like if you liked it, subscribe if you want to, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.